In today's LEGO City update, I'm going to be building a wall around my river, finishing off the plating on the river, and then finally adding some details. So I'm going to be adding a market stall and a couple of trees and some minifigures, and that's going to be really good. So make sure you stick around to the end and see what I come up with there, because I think it looks absolutely fantastic. So now obviously you can see me adding some more trans blue tiles on top of my black plates for the river. Obviously I used the black plates underneath to help create a depth effect for the river itself. But now I've already run out of blue tiles yet again, so I'm going to have to buy more, so it's time to move on to constructing the wall. Now, as you can see here, I'm playing around with a couple of different designs and seeing what size it should be before I finally settled on this design, and this is what it's going to look like all across the river. So now it's time to continue this wall all the way down the river. Now, obviously at first it's very easy to do, but where I've got lots of curves and bends in my river, it becomes a lot more difficult to get this going. So especially as I'm starting out, I'm struggling to find the best way to shape it and angle the bricks to make sure it looks quite uniform all the way along the river. And I think I actually done a really good job at nailing this in the end. After a few trial and errors, I finally got a design that I'm happy with that will go around the corners quite nicely. And the main way I've achieved this is by using jumper plates. Now obviously, as you saw in the picture a minute ago, I used jumper plates underneath all of the masonry bricks. Now I've had to use the jumper plates in different angles and different ways to make sure I can get these bricks lined up perfectly, because obviously making curves with straight Lego bricks is not the easiest thing in the world, and this is one of the first times that I've really tried to do this properly, but I'm actually really pleased with the way it comes out, and I'm especially pleased with the design of the lights that I come up with to go on each of the ends of the wall. Now I think I found this design online and I instantly loved it. What I would like to do in the future is get LED lights put into all of the lights, because I think that would look absolutely beautiful having it lit up all the way along the river. And now obviously you can see me working on the wall on the other side. Now at first I did make a mistake because I'd done the masonry bricks the wrong way round. So I wanted to make sure I had the brick profile facing outwards and the straight line facing inwards to the river. But because of the angle I was sitting, I'd done it the wrong way around. So I had to do that over again. But making the curves around the river was so much easier on this side after having done it on the first side. So it was actually quite a lot quicker to get this second side built. But all in all, to get this river wall built all the way along the river took a good few hours, probably about 4 hours to get the whole river wall built. So obviously now I'm moving along further towards the middle of the river, and as you probably saw a few seconds ago, I was doing some tiling alongside the river just because I wanted to make sure it looked right, fitting in with the tile pattern that I wanted. So I'm just using 2x2 light bluish grey tiles, and I'm just doing these alternating because I think it makes a much more interesting pattern than just doing them straight like you'd get in a modular building. Now obviously, speaking of modular buildings, like I said in the last update, I don't really plan on using any real Lego buildings in my city. I do have a few modular buildings, so maybe when I get building the city I might put a couple of in temporarily to fill up some space, but the plan is to do pretty much everything custom, although in saying that you will see me build and place a little poly bag towards the end of this video, just because it fit really nicely in with the market. I had a little space to fill, and frankly there was no real reason to redesign it because it looks really good by itself and it's such a small build. So now finally I am nearly done with the wall. I've just got this last little stretch to go along the other side of the river, but as you'll probably see in a minute, I do run out of parts just towards the end. But I do fix this off camera as I got my bricklink order in, ready to build the market a couple of days later after building the walls. But replacing the parts that were missing was such a quick job that it wasn't even worth recording, because by the time I put it into a time lapse it probably would have lasted less than 5 seconds. So now this is pretty much it. This is the end of the wall, and then I go back to doing a few more blue tiles along the river as I got a few more in. But this was an entire pick-a-brick cup that I used, and you can see how small of an area an entire cup used. I thought it would have done a lot more, so I probably need another 2 or 3 full pick-a-brick cups of these tiles to get the rest of the riverbed finished. But now finally it's time to move on to some more exciting details. So starting off, I am building a tree. Now I absolutely loved the design of this tree. I start off by using 2 brick modifieds that have studs on every side, and then to this I then attach the plant stems, not the regular ones that have the 3 stalks, but the ones with 6 stalks. I then add one of the little flower pieces onto each stalk, and then add one of the leaf pieces on top of as many of them as I possibly could. You can't quite fit them on every one as there's not quite enough room. Now doing this creates quite a round bush shape for the tree, which I really like, and I add on a little trunk, and then now you can see the finished tree. So I think this looks really good, and it's a perfect size for a small tree in the city. So now moving on, I am starting to design my first market stall for the city, and I'll be using the same design for all of the market stalls that I'm making. So I'm using some log profile brown pieces to make the base of it, along with some 4x4 brown plates, and then I'm using some slopes to create a nice colourful top. But obviously on this one I do run out of enough white slopes because I didn't order enough. And then for this one I'm just finishing it off with some baskets of bread down at the front, which I think looks really good, so it'll obviously create this one into a bread stall. So now I'm moving on and creating my second stall, and as I just mentioned, it's the same design as before. And then for the roof on this one I'm using green and sand blue, and again I'm creating some baskets down for the front of it, and this one's going to be a fruit and veg stall, so I've got some carrots, some bananas and apples. And since it's October, I've put some Halloween pumpkins out on the side. And then the next job now was to start figuring out how I can integrate the trees into this area. And obviously, of course, how exactly I am going to position the market stalls to make sure it all looks nice. And I wanted to make sure I use some angles, so I didn't want to just put the market stalls dead straight. I want them slightly angled because I think this makes it look a lot more realistic rather than just having very straight blocky builds. Now, as you can see, I'm adding a bit of foliage to the bottom of the tree. So again, I'm using a mixture of the 6-stem and the 3-stem plant pieces, and then just adding on some different colours onto the end of each of those stems, just to help add a bit more of a pop of colour to the area, and because adding flowers and vegetation really brings the city to life. So now obviously, as you can see, I'm expanding the area that I've tiled. This is so I can help bring the tree into it and make sure the area is big enough for the market stalls, and of course to place some minifigures in the future as well. So I wanted to make sure I had a few of the jumper plates lying around so that I can dot some minifigures around a little bit randomly. And now I'm making my final stall for the market, and again it's going to be the exact same design as all the others, but of course I will use a different coloured roof to make sure they are all slightly different, at least on appearance. And on this one, the piece I had available were dark tan and orange slopes to create the roof. Now I'm continuing the tiling, and as you can see, I've integrated the tree, and I think this looks really good like this. And obviously, like I just mentioned, adding some jumper plates in a really random way, just to make sure I can place some minifigures in and about. And now, as I mentioned earlier, this is the popcorn cart. This is the poly bag that I built, and it helps just fill that little gap in between the two trees. And then now it's time for the before and after pictures for today's video. So obviously before is literally nothing, and then now I've added all of the walls and the lights and the market stalls, and I think this looks really good. Let me know what you think, and if you have any suggestions for my next episode.